We are here to bring you everything and anything surrounding Porsche. I'm Mike.
I'm Aaron.
And this is P-Car Talk.
All right. Hey, welcome to another episode of P-Car Talk. I'm Mike.
And I'm Aaron.
And we are here at Rolex 24 with special guest Patrick Long with Wrights Motorsports. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are honored to have you on the show.
Yeah, good to be here. It's already ramping up. The energy's going. I'm still in my race suit. I've had one of those type of days where I barely got a little snack of lunch in, and it's just been going off.
Yeah, nice. Absolutely. It's pretty nuts. And before we get rolling, I want to go have a big thanks to the PCA. I want to thank Lynn. I want to thank Mike. And I want to thank Lisa for letting us basically commandeer their PCA 10 come in here and have you as a special guest. It's an honor to be in here, and let's get going. So let's talk a little bit. Obviously, we're here for race weekend, right? And Wrights Motorsports. Thoughts and prayers go out to Ryan Hardwick. Hopefully a speedy recovery for him. Had a little bit of an accident on course. You guys as a team are obviously having to make an adjustment because he's an integral part of your team. What are you guys having to do? Are you guys going to have to take more stints? Because obviously this is a very long, treacherous race, 24 hours. Because I know you guys pulled up another driver, but you guys have all been practicing together, meaning i.e. Ryan. What's happening now? Like, what are you guys doing in involved to that?
Yeah, it's a big disruption to our momentum. We've had an awesome couple of weeks here. It feels like a month, but I guess it's only been about 10 days. Combining the Roar and the race is interesting. This is, I think, 18th or 19th Rolex in a row for me, and normally I'm used to kind of coming out of New Year's haze and jumping right into a race car the 3rd or 4th of January. So they've moved it to the end of the month, and I think that's great, mostly for efficiency in cost, but also for schedule and just allowing yourself to kind of get out of the holidays before you go right into racing. And we had a great week. We had a car that was just unusually drivable and quick right off the truck.
That's always a blessing, right?
Yeah, and it's almost too good to be true because you realize how hard it is to not only get a setup at this track, but the weather changes, the conditions change so quickly. So from one day to the next, the track is dry, it's sunny, but you go from the top of the grid and oversteer to the back of the grid and understeer, and you don't know why. So anyways, long story short, Ryan had an unfortunate incident in the GT4 car, which took him out of the chance to race with us in the 24. It's a disruption mostly because Ryan is a leader, and this is essentially his program in conjunction with Wright Motorsport, who is the team engineer and the logistics staff. This is a commercial exercise. Racing is really a commercial exercise, and
100%.
This is Ryan's program. First Form is a sponsor of his that he's brought to racing, and everybody behind it as well. Una Vida, Mountain Motorsports, etc. So Ryan is our guiding light, and he's the type of person that does everything to the 11th degree. He's a consummate professional, and not having him here at the track is weird, let alone not in the car. But we've adjusted. We've brought Trent Hinman in, who was high on my list, high on Ryan's list, high on Jan's list. We've all driven either together with him or against him. He's a young up-and-coming American. He's still a silver, which was imperative for the rules, which technically classifies him as an amateur. But, anyways, we won't get into that right now.
Like the real difficult, he's a platinum driver. It's like, people are going to be like, what is that exactly, right? So
we won't get into driver ratings because there's not enough time in the day. But anyways, he's slotted right in. He's impressed us with his getting up to speed quickly, few demands, few egos, and that's what you need when you plug and play.
100%.
People wonder, I can drive cars fast, so I should be a professional. Well, I mean, driving is 1/10 of the battle.
100%.
And when we go through that assessment where we have something unprecedented in our team where we lose a driver before the race, you have to react quickly. And the background commentary on a short list of drivers is an amazing episode for Netflix, I can tell you that.
That's a great point because you indicate, and we've talked to many other race car drivers, and I'm sure you were going to elaborate on that, where the dynamic of the team is that's 1/10 of it. Yeah, you're fast, but are you a team player? Like, hey, I need you unexpectedly on the fly. Are you accommodating, or are you a drama queen? Like, hey, I know you weren't planning to run another night stent, but I need you to stay in the car and run another stent tonight. And it's like, oh, well, I was going to get out and get a snack. It's like, are you going to throw a fit or are you going to go for it, right?
Are you going to be fast? Are you going to mentally be ready for this? How are you going to fit in? And,
And that's huge, though, because that changes the culture of the team if you have that person who's on your team, and regardless of motorsport, in any sport where you're just like, oh, he's always difficult about this stuff. You already know what the answer is going to be or the body language behind that person, right? And in a 24-hour race, there's no place for that. Like, because you have to be dialed in. Everybody has to be dialed in because, as we know, as time has gone on, it comes down to the craziest thing about it. It's like, okay, they won by seconds, and they raced for an entire day straight, and it came down to seconds. So it's nuts to think about that, and that's great that you guys have a good backup.
Yeah, this race, especially this year with 49 cars, it's a big bump in the amount of cars on the track per square inch of available free run. A lot of rookie drivers in the prototypes, which is a double standard because they're down on experience and they're up on horsepower and downforce.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of moving pieces to this race. Survival is our goal for at least the first half of the race, and that's kind of cliche. A lot of people talk about surviving endurance racing, but the reality is that the cars, the level of reliability and performance that the cars have today compared to when I started my professional sports car career, you really run at qualifying pace the whole time, and that means that the margin of error is so low. So back to selecting a driver, he's got to fit in the seat, he's got to fit in the culture, he's got to get up to speed quickly, he's got to make few demands about how he likes the car to be set up or what color brownie he likes after he gets out of the car.
Exactly.
And reality is that he has to temper his ego and his personal willingness to display his talents and his ability to go fast for what is the best for the team and the best for the car. And that's always a tap dance. You're walking a tightrope for 3 hours at a time. You're mentally and physically exhausted, and you have to continue to temper emotion when you're out there on the edge.
Yeah. Talking about butt pucker moments, let's go back to last season a little bit. You guys had a phenomenal season with Wrights Motorsports. We were at Sebring, and we watched you guys on that last night stent, and you were in the car basically playing defense at the very end. I mean, last race of the season, the Sebring was pushed back to November, obviously. Usually it's a March race. I mean, that intensity, just that, because everybody's pushing so hard, right? Those last couple laps, as time is literally ticking off the clock. Like, go through a little bit of that, like, emotions. Like, what are you thinking about during those times?
Yeah, you definitely, first kind of emotional conversation you have in your own head is when it's your turn to take over and your helmet's on and you're standing on the pit wall and the car's coming down pit lane. That's the time to really rely on your sports psychology, your performance thinking. You really have to keep yourself in check and allow your focus and your energy to be put into the right direction and not be pulled into the what ifs or the self-doubts or any of that. So we get paid to do that.
The unknown.
Exactly.
Yeah. And consummate professional type stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, it's you against yourself. I mean, if you think about that, key putt when you're golfing or that free throw, if there's a little bit of self-doubt as that ball leaves your hand, it's usually a shank, right? So that's what you have to fight pre-stint. Once you get in and you roll out of pit lane and you get your driver change done smoothly, it's pretty straightforward. Instinct takes over. 30 years of racing is what you rely on at that point. But running in those last 5 laps at Sebring in the pitch black with multiple classes fighting for one of the biggest sports car trophies in all of racing. I didn't know if I was leading. I didn't want to know how far the car was behind me. I'm a pretty chatty driver in regular reality, but in those 10 laps, I didn't have an extra ounce of energy to...
Comms went quiet.
Everything went quiet, and it was just time to find your flow and to hit that nature. And you don't always do it. It was a wild finish. The short story was the Mercedes had the car to win. The Ferrari was leading. They tangled up with an LM car. I was right there to see it and sort of was in the catbird seat to slip through. And then the part that wasn't shown on TV was the Aston blew by me down the back straightaway on that lap and took the lead. And I thought to myself, that thing has so much straight line speed. I don't really know how I'm going to react here. And instead of allowing myself to even finish that thought, I charged on into 17. He got in a little bit hot. I slid underneath him, and then I realized that if he got to me again, I wasn't going to have that second chance to repass him.
Yeah.
And that's when I just put my head down. And yeah, it was one of the biggest victories of my career. Emotionally,
that's awesome.
It was it unloaded. There's creases in the roof because I was literally jumping on the roof.
That's so awesome, and it was exciting for us as fans and enthusiasts being there too and watching that. Because, I mean, it was literally nail-biting at the end, and, like, it was so exciting and so proud of you guys. Obviously want to continue that success with this year. And I think a lot of that has to do with you and Jan have a lot of experience collectively, obviously just recently racing together, but just personal relationships, as we talked off mic a little bit. When he was in Formula 3, you were kind of helping him along because you were in Formula 3 before him as younger men, like showing him the ropes and like kind of helping him along, even just with like room and board and all that kind of stuff. And now you guys are married up, you were like last year, but now you guys are in the car together. Doesn't that help a little bit, like that you guys have had such a long bond, even if you guys haven't been buddy all of these years, you guys have that working relationship together, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it comes back to trust, the ability to know how direct you can be with somebody, just communication principles, really. And then the other side of it is, we enjoy, racing together. It's weird that we've been friends since the late 90s, but I don't know if we technically had shared a car until last year.
That's what he said.
Wild.
That's what he said.
Which is kind of nuts, to think about that. But I mean, all good. Like, you guys are bringing experiences from different angles. You guys have both spent different areas of your careers in other areas, but now you guys are kind of gelling together, and I'm sure you guys are going to especially lean on that, having your leader, as you said, Ryan, out for this particular race, your experience and all the experience that Jan has as well for this particular 24 hours. So that's going to be a big help, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, admittedly, we're still working through some decisions. It's, the eve of the race, and that's how it goes down. I mean, I just ran into Elio Castroneves, and he's still in his race suit, and he was jogging by me. So everybody runs it hard right till the very end. I mean, the goal and the hope is you get away nice and early tonight, have a relaxed dinner, make sure you're on top of your hydration and your nutrition, roll in tomorrow, have everything laid out so that you consume the least amount of energy. When you think about 24 hours, it's really a 36-hour race because you're laying awake at 3 a.m. thinking, all right, 12 hours from now we're going green. But yeah, it's a long day, to say the least. And part of getting through these races, they're difficult physically and mentally, no matter how many you've done, is just preparation and being fit and active and all of that stuff. But I mean, down to like laying out your Nomex underwear and knowing your schedule and knowing your PR schedule and just kind of cruising and getting out of the car and being able to step out of pit lane, disconnect, and just kind of rest your mind.
And I think a lot of listeners don't understand too, like, and they may understand, but I think there's a lot of people that maybe come to the track and they don't see all the like hard work you guys put in that doesn't get seen. And I think even we talked to Van Thor on Tuesday, and he talked a lot about, even when he was at Spa last year, he's going through emotional roller coaster ride about sometimes even with your mental strength, and you always need to be like on your game and confident. And he was not feeling confident because he put the car off track a couple races before that, like consistently, and he had to call his mental coach. And I think for all of you guys who have that continuous like mental therapy and you keep going through all that, the strength and all that stuff to have to build on and the focus, I think a lot of that gets missed, to be completely honest with you, where it translates to the fans and like,
you just see what you see on TV.
And they see all the sexy side of, let's be honest, like, it must be great to be a race car driver, right?
Easy.
Like,
get in the car,
you show
drive.
up and just drive, and it's like,
trophy.
the countless hours you guys spend training, spending in the room, looking at stuff, looking at the data. Hey, you're apexing a little too early here. Hey, you're apexing a little late here. It gets, for some people, and it takes a lot, like you said earlier, you can't just be fast. Like, sometimes it's tire management, sometimes it's fuel management, sometimes it's mental health management. So there's a lot of stuff, and I think it says a lot for you guys that have had illustrious, long careers, like yourself, Jan, who have been able to keep fighting. That shows that you guys are really mentally tough.
Yeah, it starts early. I mean, Lawrence, myself, Jan, I mean, we all started as young kids karting, and you start to learn racecraft, you start to learn how to extract speed, and then there's that kind of 1% of the 1% who get a chance to make it on a pro level. And getting that opportunity is a massive multi-year quest. But then, as you say, staying there, that's the hardest part, because at any point, there's just so many fast men and women out there who just want your spot. They're your best friend. They're asking you for advice. They're asking you for intros. But all they really want is your seat.
Yeah.
And that was me. I was roaming the Champ Car paddock, just waiting for drivers to finish their chat with their engineer before I could kind of just get a little FaceTime, ask them a little advice, try to network. And there's amazing talent. I mean, the evolution of all sports, but motorsport, they have so many more tools with simulation, with the science of motorsport. I mean, I'm a big Supercross fan. I've been watching Supercross this year, and I look back on the video footage of Ricky Carmichael coming in and taking over from the throne of Jeremy McGrath, and it looks like a 250 LCQ. I mean, the technology of the bikes, the physicality of the riders, every sport, that's what's happened in sports car racing as well. I mean, a kid will come to Daytona, he's never seen the place before, and by the third lap, he's as fast as he's going to go all weekend. It's amazing. I mean, for us, it took us, 3-4 years to do what they do in 3 or 4 laps.
Yeah, it is incredible, like the growth and like where they're at with things like that. And that's a great point, because motorsport, I mean, even from F1, like, and we've talked to other, like, everybody's goal obviously is F1. Like, that's why you guys do Formula 3. You do open wheel to hopefully eventually work your way into that seat. Obviously, that's a very, very small percentage of people, because we know there's only so many teams running F1, so there's only so many seats. But you start to figure out, I can still have a career here just because I'm not in F1. Everybody obviously wants to shoot for the moon, wants to be that rock star, but you can also have a long career racing GT cars. You can still do all that stuff, and you guys have managed to do it. And I think the longevity is an amazing feat on itself, to be able to be consistent, do all those things. And like, I commend you and your teammate Jan and stuff like that to be able to do that. So that's good for you guys, and like having the discipline, because you, like you said, you have somebody always waiting to sit in your seat. Like, the minute you blink, they're like, hey bud, I'm here. So anytime you're tired, I'm ready to go.
Yeah, it's a unique pedigree. I look at some of the people I've been able to meet or read about who are sort of serial C-level, huge businessmen, leaders, and I think to myself, man, they go from company to company, jumping laterally, leading these massive multi-million-dollar companies, and it's a gift that they have, that they're able to do that. It's a small group that kind of stay at the top.
Yeah.
And everybody underneath them is just waiting for them to fail and wanting to be in their seat. And to sustain that amount of energy and to put your family through what it is of changing the state that you live in, every 3 or 4 years, having a publicly traded company and all the legal that comes into every decision that's made. I see similarities there. Mentally, to stay at the top, you have to have so much endurance and so much love. It's a weird kind of effed up subconscious love
100%
that keeps you driving at that kind of level. But it's great. It's what we've all trained to do. It's what we've all dreamt of doing, and it has to be one of the best jobs in the world. I talk about my role at Luft compared to my role as a Porsche factory driver, and they couldn't be more different, because as a factory driver, I show up last, I leave first. I have people, resources around me. Everything is perfect. I mean, the labels on my steering wheel are aligned, with a level. And then, my job is to tell them where it needs to be better. Basically, to just get in the car and crap on everything.
Yeah,
exactly. So to have that as a career is pretty sweet, where you're there and everybody's looking to you to kind of direct performance, and then to learn about the other end of business and what it takes just for this racetrack here to produce this event. It's an unbelievable, eye-opening experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And you touched on Luft, so like some of the listeners that may not know, and I don't know why they don't know, but there are some water-cooled guys that maybe don't pay attention, or that, like, obviously you're one of the founders of Luftgekühlt. Started off as like a very chill event at a coffee house in a parking lot with 15 cars, and has turned into this really mega event and a premier event where everybody, water-cooled or air-cooled, if you're a Porsche enthusiast, you want to attend, whether you want to spectate. And obviously Jeff Swart is a big part of that with staging and all that kind of stuff, and big kudos to him. Did you ever expect Luft to be that way? I know the answer, but I just...
No, I definitely saw a hole. It's kind of back to, I couldn't find the sports car I wanted, so I built it myself.
Yeah.
There wasn't that show that mixed architecture and West LA vibe with the culture of Porsche, and I wanted to fuse the two. I wanted to build an event that non-Porsche folk would be as excited to go to as the faithful. But the scale and what it's become and just the pressure to try and remain
every time.
and remain inclusive and remain humble and remain approachable as a brand is not easy. It's back to that kind of people are there kind of either rooting for you or rooting against you. But no, the reality is the Porsche passion is alive. You guys deal with it on a daily basis. You live and breathe this brand, and that's all it really is. It's an extension of this brand, kind of Porsche's brand, crafted in our own kind of message, in our own format. And I think the proudest part for me is feeling that we were kind of a part of breaking cars and coffee out of an empty parking lot and saying, let's
100%.
go visit breweries, let's go celebrate architecture, let's go to the unexpected and introduce the Porsche culture and the product to people who don't otherwise see these cars on a regular basis.
Yeah, I think that's a great description of it, because honestly, it really is that. And like, not to take anything away from the creativity where it is now, obviously it's super huge. Like the last one you guys had in California we were at, it was just, I'm sure you've seen it. Like, there's so many comments. It's like, how is it going to get any better than this? This was the top, because you had literally like a desert scene, and then you had so many cars staged. You had safari cars, you had race cars, you had the city scene. And I mean, it was just such an amazing event and such a, I guess, a candy land for enthusiasts. Really was. It's such a treat, and cars that people are never going to get to see. And you guys always bring out the best hardware. You guys do such a good job, with your connections with people and having them bring those special cars out that maybe never would get seen somewhere else.
It's true.
And I think it's such a treat to the public who attend to these events. And I love what you guys are doing. Obviously, 2020 was kind of a down year for everybody in general, and for safety's sake, which is a good move on you guys' part, deciding to postpone the event, which was going to be held on the East Coast, like Durham area and things like that. Moving to 2021, obviously, COVID is still around, but do you guys anticipate having a Luft in 2021? If so, is it probably going to be later in the year, and would it be on the East Coast? Can you elaborate a little bit?
Yeah, it's a watch and wait. My fingers were burnt. The whole team's fingers were burnt a little bit when we thought to ourselves, all right, the initial date wasn't going to work for us in spring of 2020, so we'll go ahead and move it out to, I guess it was the end of October. And none of us knew what this pandemic was going to mean or do to the nature of outdoor inclusive events. Coming here to Daytona and the view that we're sitting in right now, it makes you optimistic. Everybody's got a mask on, for the most part.
Yeah.
They're keeping their distance, and outside is in right now.
Yeah.
But there still needs to be more in order for us to kind of produce Luft as it's become. It was never my vision of having a 7,000 person event, and so with that, the crowds have to be accounted for. I think that there are markets and there are venues that would allow us the first half of the year to produce a big event, if you will. But right now, my viewpoint and the team's viewpoint is, let's be part of the solution, not part of the problem. And let's not be a super spreader event. So we're gonna hold fast. I'm confident that Q3, Q4, that there'll be some potential with the vaccine and everything else that's going on. I don't want to get too political. In this case, it's about just doing the right thing. So we had a small event that was just kind of a pop-up.
Yeah, that was nice at Petite, right?
Yeah, so there might be a couple of those up our sleeve between now and Q3. I've heard some whispers that there's a few happening down in South Florida in the next couple weeks that kind of are inspired by that, and that's good. We'll see how it goes. But I just feel like we're on the cusp of getting this thing heading in the right direction. So I'm kind of fingers crossed that a bunch of big events won't be out there in the next couple of months. I saw that Amelia was moved to May. I talked to Bill Warner pretty much every week. I'm on an advisory committee with him. And so he keeps us up to speed. And the reality is that at this scale, the only way to produce Luft the way we do is to have real partnerships, paying sponsors who can front us the ability to produce an event of that amount of scale. A lot of people who aren't in the events business, including myself, underestimate just how much cost and risk there is and how much money you have to put out in front.
100%.
This isn't just, hey, we're going to have 25 cars show up to the local coffee shop. I mean, once you have people flying in from all over the world, you're accountable to them. You're accountable to your host and, of course, the sponsors. And so my point is that our partners are saying, hey, we really are. We're not just a sponsor that says, hey, you guys are going to do an event. We're in. They have a voice in this. Yeah. And so we're just keeping in constant communication with them. We have our eye on a city. It's one of those things where I don't want to say too much because I don't want to start projecting that this is going to happen. But the plans are there. It's a weekly call that we have where we talk about it every single week. The team calls in. And we're ready to go if and when it's time.
Yeah, I appreciate that too, because like from a responsibility standpoint, like we understand that too. And a lot of people always ask us, they're like, hey, P-Car Talk, why don't you guys have like a big track day event and rent out the track? And I go, you guys don't understand like what it takes to make that happen. Like, first of all, like we have to front the $15,000 to rent the track. And then if you guys don't show, we're accountable for that. And then we're accountable for all the safety there. And if something goes sideways, we're responsible for all that. So I think that's a good point for you to elaborate where Luft wants to be responsible, also host an event. We understand everybody likes it, but we also want to make sure that you guys aren't a contributor. And that's a great point because everybody they think that we have information because we do what we do. And they're like, well, when's this happening? And I'm like, I don't know when it's happening. I'm like, I bet Patrick doesn't even know when it's happening. So it's going to happen when it's going to happen, right? Like, I think that's always the answer. Like, you'll know as soon as they can tell people, basically.
Yeah, and one of the other deals that's really tricky is that you really never can pick a date in the year in this day and age where you don't have a conflict with another automotive event. We always get hundreds of emails. It's like, it was my wife's birthday. I can't believe you had Luft on that weekend.
Just for you, we're going to change it.
And everything in between, down to clashes with with California Festival of Speed. It was never our intent, but one of the tricky things that is outside that's outside of our control is that we don't go to event centers, we don't go to racetracks or golf courses where we could just kind of pick any date. We go to, a lot of times we're at a place of business, and so we have to fit the hours of the show, the day of the show, in the schedule that they allow. So sometimes we do get on top of each other, and I think post-pandemic, or at least when this thing starts heading in the right direction, there's going to be more than enough choice of car experience. So we're trying to get out ahead of that, but at the same time, it's a very slippery slope.
Yeah, that's a really, really good point, because I think, and I'm sure you get inundated with a lot of it too, and I think you do a really great job of trying to be as cordial as possible and civil with so many fans that try to probably reach out to you directly and say, hey, when's the next Luft, man? I want to take PTO. I want to take vacation. You're like, hey, bud, you know how many of these I get per day? So, and at the same time, and especially in the COVID era that we're in right now, and not trying to hold you to anything, but I think a lot of us East Coasters, we were going to have our final, our East Coast event, right? Everybody was hyped, everybody was ready to go. And will we get another East Coast event at least? It's not gonna go west right away. Was that a default? Hey, bro, sorry about it.
You had your chance.
That was that. Hey, Rona got you, bro. Yeah. Sorry about it, but do you think possibly? I know, we're not gonna hold you to it. But is East Coast going to get another chance?
Look, I'm a pretty straightforward guy. I wear my heart on my sleeve, and I'm a community member. I'm a Porsche collector. I'm not anything different than you guys or anybody that's listening. The reality is that it's back to that opportunity when the pieces all fit together. So I don't have that answer, but I definitely was excited. There were so many people that were bummed, mostly Southern California people, that we weren't doing the 7th Luft in SoCal. And it's always been on my agenda to make this a traveling show. And Jeff Zwart, who's always kind of giving me great ideas, and we're always talking about it. It really is a passion project. Howie as well. when it comes down to it, we're going to do East Coast. We're going to do Midwest. We're going to do SoCal.
That's awesome.
We don't want to dilute
you
the
don't want to be
experience.
geographically locked in somewhere, right?
Well, no, I'm just saying we don't want to dilute what is Luft. I mean, a lot of people say the essence of Luft is it's a SoCal annual event, blah, blah, blah. Look, one thing I've said from day one is we're going to let this brand define itself because it is a living, breathing thing. It's not Jeff, it's not me, it's not anybody. It's just, it's a community, and the community decides. But without being cliche, I think the idea that Joshy and his crew had of kind of a Forrest Gump west to east run, that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that Valkyrie run. I was going to be part of that. I was going to meet them in Tennessee and come over.
That was a great idea where essentially the pack gets bigger as it heads east.
Yes.
So we'll do stuff like that. It's just give it time. I'm bummed because Durham was just the perfect scenario of timing of the city.
Yeah.
The people, I've spent so many days there planning, and I worked on that venue personally since 2016.
It's almost like something it hasn't flourished yet.
Yeah, I mean, Rory, Cam's brother, hit me up and he was like, I think I have a venue for you. And that's a lot of times how Luft has found its new home. And I thought, not sure it's for us. And then through time, going to VIR, being friends with the Ingram family, I spent more and more time in the city, and I just was like, damn, this town is so ripe for Luft. And what the cool part about Durham is that Luft would have essentially taken the whole town over.
Which was going to be awesome.
It was any bar or restaurant you walked into, you were going to see someone you knew.
Yeah.
And I talk about, I think it was called H2O or Water Fest, one of the VW events that Brian from Hoonigans, Matt Croak, who co-founded 1552, they always talked about the community, about sitting on the balcony of your crappy motel and watching kids run the drag and just knowing that was your reunion. Everybody has to grow up and start a business and start a family, but there's that 1 week where you could get away. And so I felt like Durham was going to be that chance, and I hope we can get back there. There's a few things that are in between that happening. A lot has to do with the host town being behind it, but also the venue. And I'll tell you that a few things have changed in the venue since we planned to produce the event, and so we'll see. It's wait and see, but there is another 5 or 6 venues that are in the pocket across the country that I want to get to. It's again one of those processes that I didn't know either. It's a long path of lead up to producing it.
I know. I talked to Charles offline about it and Cam a little bit, and for the listeners that don't know, I'm obviously not going to spoil what might come in the future. It was going to be so epic. I was looking forward to that so much, man. I was gonna go up a couple days earlier and actually just drive the mountain roads with Cam and Charles a little bit, just to kind of drive and hang out. I think everybody was kind of and on the East Coast side, it wasn't going to just be there for the couple days of the event. I think there was going to be there pre-event and even post-event, because at the end of the day, we're all enthusiasts and we like to drive these cars because that's what really gets them going, is because that's what they're made to do, right?
And just to be clear, I'm not turning my back on Durham. It's a pandemic, so we have to watch and wait.
I get it.
But I think that's the other part. Luft took a little bit of let's say, shifted up into the next gear. I'm trying to think. It was probably Luft 4 where I had this kind of epiphany. I love analogies, and I said to the team, I kind of want this to be, this sounds weird, I want it to be like the best wedding you've ever been to, where the actual wedding is kind of just the end of it, but the week leading up, as you say, all the different activities, just being in the same city with so many people that you love, and you might not all be on the same agenda, but that's kind of where we shifted a little bit of the multi-event foundation, and kind of went to a 4-day scale. We did that for Luft 6 and Luft 5, started pretty early with some ramp-up parties, and then, everybody kind of jumps in, and there's some piggybacking, but for the most part, we try to curate the shows that we think are the right-minded people, and push a little bit of limelight their way, and that's just another part of the event world that it's kind of one of those things where if you're doing it right, then there are people producing their own event in the same place as you, and we take it all in stride. In the end, this is not my day-to-day job. It's something that is just, we're just trying to keep up with it.
And I think the interesting thing too is where it was it's like where the growth of it, where it started, it turned into one of those things. It's like, hey, it's just a couple guys who want to get together and go to a different venue other than a parking lot. I think and it's manifested since then. And I think you guys are doing a fantastic job of like wrangling this animal, because it's turned into like, it's like on steroids now, right? Like it's this big honking like beast of like a thing of, oh my God, there's 7,000 people want to come to this. And I have an entire team of people just trying to filter through the cars people want to bring to this, not alone the personnel on foot. Like all of these awesome cars want to come, and where do we get to a point of like who can display their car, who can't display their car, and you get all these people like, well, I didn't get to display my car. It's not even about that. It's about the camaraderie. It's about the hangout. It's about the and for the listeners, I want people to understand that like just because your car doesn't get displayed, like if that was your whole goal to go to the event, then you're missing the idea of it.
Yeah, and actually there's some people that have figured out that they may enjoy the event more when they can come and go as they please.
Yeah.
I love to get direct messages or be sent screenshots, and hey, if they're mad or happy, at least they care, right?
Yeah, right.
And so you're never gonna please everybody, but for instance at Universal, I can't remember how many cars we actually had on the ground, but it was limited by the regulations of NBC Universal and legal. But I think we had under 20% of the cars that submitted an entry and paid for an entry that we were able to accept. So naturally, 80% of the cars and owners were pretty pissed off. And you know what? It's a great problem to have, but I had 400 people on my roster working that event. So I had bigger things to worry about than the 80% of the cars that didn't get in. I had 400 people that I had to pay. Those are no volunteers.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's a checks and balances. It's a business for for those 6 months. And so you kind of get through it. You try to remember it. You try to enjoy it. You try to be able to have enough bandwidth to stop and smile and hang out. And one of the favorite parts of Luft for me is just putting the radio down and, maybe towards the end of the day, kind of the happy hour, just walking around and trying to absorb it and enjoy it for a minute.
I've caught Jeff a couple times where him and I have had a sidebar conversation of that golden hour when he actually just gets to walk around, and like yourself, very recognizable, Jeff, very recognizable, because you guys done so much in the Porsche industry. And I know it's tough for you guys, even out here, to just be you for a little bit, right? Like be a fan. Like instead of having to always, and not that it's a burden, but like I know how it's like where you guys want to just go and you're like, I want to just look at the stuff too, because I'm just like you guys. I want to see the stuff, and then you're like, everybody's tugging at you, all these different, hey Patrick, can I talk to you? And of course you're going to do the right thing. You're going to say, hey, how's it going? Oh, good, thank you for coming, and all that stuff. And it's tough. I feel for you guys in those situations, because everybody's pulling at you guys nonstop, where you guys are like, you put this amazing event on, and I got to see it through basically Jeff's lens, because that's all I got to see.
Yeah, the amazing part of that is it's really just a measurement of time and organization. If you have the bandwidth and the team to deliver the detail of what our enthusiasm is for Porsches, then you have that ability to go out and breathe it all in. And that's where sponsors make a difference, because it allows you to have the proper HR, and you have the proper amount of time to prepare and to see through, and to not let it get diluted over time, to not take your eye off of the perfection of every inch and the thought process that goes into what actually goes on forever, which are the images. I mean, once Monday comes around, it's over. Everything's torn down. It was there, it's gone. And so you try to make it live on, and that's really the catalyst for our book. We just finished up our second book, which really puts it puts its arm around the second trio of events annually in Los Angeles, as well as Munich and Bicester, where we kind of took a road trip in 2018.
That was really cool.
So yeah, it's fun, and producing a book, it brings back a lot of memories. I mean, a lot of the images, of course, I remember the car, but I didn't remember how it was laid out or whose car it was. So it's fun to kind of live back through the thousands of images as we go through the final selection of, again, it's one of those things, my car didn't make the book, but we brought in a designer, Ralph Helms this year. He's not a Porsche guy, and that was by design, because we want to extract images that speak to a professional designer, and that it's not about the quality of the car. We don't select the cars that are in the event by, those are the best 20% of the cars. From day one, the journey of Luft, and this kind of the playbook, and it's out there anyways, but the idea was to tell the story of what air-cooled Porsches are and the diversity. When we look out here today into the corral of, what a middle 90s 930 with chrome wheels and US ride height, that speaks to me as a demographic of a certain type of Porsche owner. That type of car needs to be at Luft. No matter how big or elitist people want to think Luft is, we still want to tell the grassroots story of all the different types of ownership that are out there. And we can't get every single car in there, but you want to have a mixture of your usual suspects. As far as it's down, for me, if Mark shows up with his blue 356, he's in. He's a lifer because he's part of the culture. He's an ambassador. He's the one of the most pure forms of an air-cooled head there will be. I'll never get tired of seeing his car. Yeah. But another car might not make it in because it was in the year before. It's been in one time before. Yeah. Again, it's my party and I'll cry if I want to. In the end, we're making this up as we go. And James Longstaff, who works tirelessly on a lot of the selection criteria, Jeff Zwart, myself, Howie, there's a huge team. Mark Hotchkiss is a guy, he's got a famous name in sports car racing. For the sports car fans living, they'll know who the Hotchkiss family is. I mean, Mark's an unbelievable part of the recipe of car placement, of managing over $100 million of cars that we have on our insurance policy on that day.
Which is insane. It's crazy about that. Because, you guys are having like one of 10s, one of 3s out there too. And that prototypes. And I think a lot of people, don't really, grasp the magnitude of that. Because if something were to go sideways there's one less of those now in the world.
Yeah, it's a big part of the learning process. It's some of the, just naivety is bliss in the sense early on. You don't realize when Alan Benjamin brings $1 million GT2 to Luft 1, you're just like, that's cool. Whatever.
That was pretty awesome.
Yeah, I always tell the story that my buddy Efren, his pretty rough 912 was parked next to an original 73, a 27 RS, and I had never seen a 27 in person other than at the Porsche Museum, and it was parked right next to Efren's, $20,000 912. But that's the fun in it. But when you get, what we had at Universal inside that was featured, staged and lit, the 3 open top Spiders, 917 PA, 91710, 91730. That's roughly 60 million in those 3 cars there. So it's pretty insane. And those cars have to be positioned the night before. So it's a pretty traditional thing for me to sleep right within 100 feet of those cars. I stay overnight because my ass is on the line.
Exactly.
And I want to know what's going on.
In tow.
So that's I'm a hands-on guy, maybe more than my team wants me to be.
Yeah. No, I love it. I love what you guys have done with it. And I thank you for the explanation of like prior to that, where you were talking about like the grassroots of it, like speaking about like cars like Marks and guys that are really involved in the culture, like where you see them driving cross country, the guys that are going everywhere, the guys that are involved in the community. I think that speaks a lot to it too. Like regardless if it's a significant car or not, it's significant in the community is what really matters, right? Yeah. Like, yes, you may have a 1 of 3 that lives in a basement that's always air conditioned and the car never drives and it's a special car on its own. But if it only comes out for that one event, like it really takes away from the specialness of it, because I feel like if it's special, it should always be out, right? Like it should always be shared with the community, because what makes that car valuable in my impression, and I think with you guys, is the availability of the eyes of the dreamer to see it. The people to see the era of the car, or, okay, that was what an 80s 930 looked like. Oh, wow, that's what a 73 RS really looks like non-modified, like that's how it is. And outlaw cars have their place too, and I like those too, and I'm not saying that but I think the variety is what really makes your show step up and so unique. And I really appreciate all the hard work you guys do, your entire team, and how professional you guys have made it. And I get it. Like, you can't please everybody, and there's always like tons and tons of people that get butthurt over stuff. But I think at the end of the day, what it is like, I appreciate it. I'm more of the glass half full kind of guy, where I'm like, I'm glad that it happens, like all together, because the alternative is it doesn't happen.
Yeah, I mean, the logistics and planning of it, we're learning. And, we started off with kind of the money in our pockets, and now we have responsibility to real corporate companies that are flying in guests from all over the country and sometimes internationally. But I'll tell you a funny story. Jeff Swartz, a guy that I met here racing in IMSA, my first year that I did the Petit Le Mans, I didn't know Jeff's background, but when you go and you're on a movie set or a commercial set, you understand about HR, you understand about organization, about when they call a producer or a coordinator. I mean, Jeff is a world-renowned director, and the director's kind of like the racing driver. I mean, he's the tip of the iceberg, and everybody underneath him really is there to get that shot that he's directing. And so when I was on a recent shoot with a couple of pretty cool celebrities in Taycons, we were shooting up in the hills in Malibu, and Jeff was the director, and I was one of the kind of guest drivers. And anyways, you understand how efficient and how organized a movie set or a commercial set works, and that's great inspiration for me. And it just proves how little we knew when we started out on this journey. And we're chipping away at it. But for the people who produce their own events, whether they're car shows or not, they're nodding their head. It's just a lot of moving pieces, and it gets back to, it's not rocket science. It's really down to communication, preparation, organization, which isn't different from racing. But the last thing I'll say on the racing side is that I've come in and out of meetings today, and it's about balance of performance and extracting the most speed from your car. And the organizers, IMSA, man, they have a tough job because everybody's lined up outside of their truck to tell them how they're effing up. And how they need to change the balance of performance to allow their organization or their OEM to look better.
I'm so sick of BOP.
Yeah, or the fan who's mad that they had to wait X amount of hours to get their COVID test on the way in. I mean, logistics are hard, man. And so I definitely have a little more of a relaxed view when I come to events like this. I realize what goes into it.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to take too much more of your time. I know you're a busy guy. I want to thank you so much for everything that you do within the community. I want to wish you the best of luck tomorrow and safety to your team in Wrights Motorsports. I know you guys are going to kick butt. You guys kicked butt last season. I'm excited to see you guys out there. Aaron, do you have anything before we close with Patrick and let him get back to what he needs to do?
Nothing for me.
Okay. Well, thank you, Patrick, for coming on, and we're looking forward to Luft and looking forward to seeing you in the car.
Yeah, it should be fun. Thanks for having me on, and man, I hope when the sun comes up in 2 days from now that we're in a position to fight, and the night stuff's going to be wild. I mean, the prototypes are so aggressive out here, and it's going to be just elbows up. We just did analysis on how many yellows we had in the last 5 years of this race, and it's come between, I think, 5 and 20 yellows. So we don't really know what kind of race we have out in front of us, but it'll be a heck of a show. And stoked to be here chasing that watch.
Awesome.
Nice.
Well, thank you so much, Patrick. And we'll close on that. See you guys on the next one.
That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of P-Car Talk. Connect with us on Instagram at P-Car Talk or online at pcartalk.com.